What's up guys, my name is Andy. This is a great day because today I get to remove the automatic transmission and put in a manual transmission. I've been waiting for this since I bought the car. In fact, when I was looking for a fastback, I wanted a manual transmission, but because these cars are kind of hard to come by and they're getting more expensive, sometimes you gotta take what you can get. So went ahead and got the automatic with the plans of putting in a T5 transmission, which is what I'll be doing. This is a part one of a two-part video. So this video we'll spend the time removing the transmission out of the car. And the nice thing about that is if you're gonna use this video to use the information to remove your transmission because you need to service the torque converter or do some other kind of work to the transmission, you can still use this to help get you through that process. But at the end of this video, we'll get set up and get ready to go to put the new T5 transmission in here. So let's get started. There's a couple of parts that we're gonna wanna remove before we lift the car, just because it's easier when the car is down. We'll take this vacuum line off here that goes to the transmission. The top two bolts on the bell housing are easier to get to from up here. And also there's a bolt for the dipstick for the transmission. We're gonna remove that out. Then we can get that out of the way. Then we can go ahead and lift the car up and start getting everything from underneath. Now that we got the car safely on all four jack stands, we can start working on the stuff underneath here. We need to drain the fluid from the transmission, so we'll just undo the pan and just let it drip in down here below. And while that's draining, we can go through and we can remove the transmission cooler lines, we can get the starter out of the way, get the exhaust unbolted. This piece actually comes out. I have it, when I was at the muffler shop, I had it set up so that we can remove just this section to get to the transmission and without having to remove the whole exhaust. So we'll get all this stuff out of the way, get everything loosened up so we can start going after getting the rest of the transmission unbolted from the car. Now we need to go after the transmission cooler lines that plug into the bottom of the radiator. Now we need to get this inspection plate off the bottom of where the block-off plate is so we can get to the torque converter bolts. Now what we can do is we can turn the crank to get these bolts in place so that we can start to remove them. And by taking these nuts off of the flex plate, we can separate the bell housing and the torque converter and transmission all in one without having to do anything else. And you may find it's easier to take these things off with an impact gun. There, that was easier than I thought. Okay, so then we're just gonna rotate the crank and get to the next one. And we'll rotate it one more time just to make sure we got them all. Yep, all of them are loose. Next, I'm going to remove these exhaust pipes, and this may be a little bit different on your car. I just have 2 bolts up there on that side and then 2 bolts on the other side over here. And then the way this exhaust is done, I've got these V-band clamps that allow me to take this whole section out. So I'm going to remove that and get this out of the way. Next, we're going to go after disconnecting the drive line from the U-joint here back here on the differential. Make sure your transmission's in neutral. That makes it easier because you got to spin this to get access to the bolts on the other side. I went ahead and just put a towel and a plastic bag and a rubber band around the end of this tail shaft just to keep anything dripping on the floor while we take the rest of this out. So we can do two more things while we're over here. We can take the speedometer cable out of the side, and then we're just gonna pick this little cotter pin out of here, and that will separate the shift linkage from up in the car from this transmission part. And just leave that hanging there. And then we can just take this bolt out for the sensor. All right, the next thing we want to do is get these two bolts on this side of the bell housing and the same thing on the other side of the bell housing over here. And then after those, then we can go after this cross member. But we're going to want to support the transmission after we get those bell housing bolts on, because once we pull these bolts out of the cross member, this thing can just fall right off. Now we probably should put the strap over the top of this thing, and I don't know how useful this stuff is, if it really does the trick, but you know what, safety first, right? I think part of the problem we're gonna have with the strap is this thing needs to fit farther up inside the tunnel here, which I can't get, so at least it's sort of secured. All right, now we can go after the bolts for this cross member. Oh, that one's on there really good. All right, everything is unbolted. Everything should be able to come out now. We've got these coolant lines are still attached to the transmission. They kind of snake around the block and over the cross member up there. So that might cause a little bit of problems, but at least we're unhooked from the radiator. So the reason why I didn't unhook them is one of the lines I can get undone, but the other one's kind of stuck on there and I'm starting to twist stuff and I don't want to break anything. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop all this assembly and then we'll just fish the lines out from around the block. Yeah, these lines are starting to get stuck on the block now, so I think I can undo these lines. This one I can undo, but this one, maybe I can work on that a little bit and get that one undone and free this from the lines. And if you use a flare nut wrench, they tend to go a little smoother when you're taking these lines off. Yeah, I'm crinkling the line here. Well, oh well. I'm not going to use this transmission, so I guess it doesn't matter. Yeah, I tried to save the line, but I couldn't do it. So we're just going to pull the lines through, and they are what they are. I made a really large mess with that transmission fluid. Looks like I opened up an artery, but that's okay. It's just leaking from the hose. And then we just need to pull off the dipstick tube so that we can slide this out from underneath. Now, because I don't have the car high enough, that bell housing is barely clearing anything, so I'm gonna have to pull it out through the front. And the last two parts we need to get is the flex plate and then the block plate. One thing I want to point out, you see how shiny this is? Because these are oily. And whoever installed this last did not put any Loctite on these threads. And so what you're gonna get is on the back of this, we've got oil on the back of this flex plate, and as this thing spins, it flings it all over this block plate, and it looks like you've got a rear main seal leak because it drips off the edge of the block plate. So if we pull this off, we got to get this out of here, but you can see how shiny that is. That's because of all the oil that was being flung off of there. That's unfortunate, but that's okay, because for now, yeah, look at how bad it is on the other side. Yikes. Now we can go after, when we put on the new block plate and the new flywheel, we'll put some thread locker on that stuff and we won't have that problem again. And the last thing that we need to take out is this center console section. Probably because I got to get this whole assembly out, which is bolted to the floor, but I'm not sure that I'm going to use this when I put the T5. I think I'm going to put the other kind of aftermarket console in here. So on my setup here, there's just a handful of screws. Whoever did this before used different screws throughout the whole thing. So in your setup, you may have the same screws in the same spot, or you may have some extra screws. Yep, this one's a little harder to reach. Now this, on mine here, this thing doesn't work well. It's actually not, it doesn't open. I don't know if it's supposed to or not, but it's just pushed in there and I can't get access to this stuff, but Allen wrench for that. Okay, from here, I imagine normally this wire harness would be hooked up to something, but it's not. Okay. Looks like we got a hex bolt holding this down. All right, and that's the last piece. Probably a good time to do some cleaning in here, and I don't know what those are. Those almost look like seeds. Like something was in here. Awesome. All right, guys, that's it. That's how you remove a C4 transmission from a classic Mustang. Again, if you were removing a C4 from pretty much any one of these cars, a lot of the processes are going to be the same. The only thing that I struggled with the most was probably those cooler lines. I ended up damaging the one front line here, trying to get that disconnected from the transmission housing here. If I was able to get that off, I'd been able to save those lines, and I'm going to probably sell this because I have no interest in keeping the automatic. It would have been nice to have those lines to go with it, but you can always buy a new set of lines anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. But I am glad that this is out. I'm very excited to get a manual transmission put in here, so this is great. So what I'm going to do next is just kind of get everything cleaned up and go through and just clean the back of that block. You saw how oily it was. I'll get that cleaned up. And I'm going to take a look inside the tunnel there to make sure that there's anything I need to take care of there before I start going to the next part. But the next video will be installing the new T5, the 5-speed transmission in here, and we'll go through all the steps of putting that in and how that's going to be done. And so I'm excited about that. So guys, if you liked the video, give me a thumbs up, and if you subscribe, I appreciate it because it helps my channel out, and we'll see you in the next one.